Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and suddenly realized they weren't who you thought they were? That something dark was hiding beneath their charm, their kindness, their carefully controlled words? It's a terrifying moment, because in that split second, your world shifts. You begin to question everything, every conversation, every gesture, every time you ignored your gut feeling just to keep the peace. And deep down, something even scarier hits you. They know you've figured it out. You're not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. You're waking up to the truth. That sick feeling in your chest? That's your intuition finally speaking louder than your fear. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You notice how the smiles don't reach their eyes, how their words twist and bend when cornered, how their silence suddenly feels like a weapon. You're not crazy. You're just finally seeing clearly. And that awareness is your greatest weapon. But it also makes you a threat to them. People like this survive on your doubt, on your silence, on your willingness to question yourself instead of them. But now, you've crossed the line. You've broken the illusion. And whether you said it out loud or just shifted your energy, they feel it. They know you know. And that changes everything. Because evil, when it's exposed, doesn't go quietly. It fights back, not with fists, but with silence, confusion, manipulation, guilt. You are no longer playing a game of logic, you're playing a game of control. But here's the power you hold now. Once you see the game, you stop playing by their rules. You stop begging for clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. You stop shrinking to protect someone else's image. And in that moment, you begin to rebuild yourself, not just stronger, but smarter, wiser, unshakable. That's what they fear the most, not your anger, not your distance, but your clarity, because clarity gives you power, power to walk away, power to speak truth, power to live without them. You didn't ask for this fight. You didn't want to believe someone you trusted could have this kind of darkness in them. But now that you know, you have a choice. You can retreat into doubt, or you can rise with a new kind of strength. The kind that says, I will no longer abandon myself just to feel safe. That's your breakthrough. That's your shift. And if you stay with this message, if you commit to learning the signs, trusting your instincts, and choosing yourself, you'll find something they never expected you to find, freedom. So stay with this. Because once you understand what evil people do when they know you know, you'll never be caught off guard again. You'll be ready. You'll be stronger. And most importantly, you'll never question your light in the presence of someone who tried to dim it. This is your turning point. Let it empower you. Let it awaken you. And let it carry you forward. They begin to shift. The moment they sense that you've seen through them, everything about their behavior changes. It's subtle at first, just enough to make you doubt yourself again. They might pull away emotionally, go quiet, or act cold, as if you're suddenly the one who did something wrong. That's no accident. It's a strategy, a calculated move to destabilize you, because if they can make you second-guess your clarity, they regain control. Control over your mind, control over your choices, control over your reality. This is psychological warfare. But the battlefield isn't loud. It's silent. It's in your thoughts, your self-doubt, your overthinking. Evil people don't need to scream to be dangerous. They just need you to lose trust in your own eyes. So when they sense you've seen them clearly, they'll gaslight your perception, play the victim, or act as if nothing ever happened. That dissonance, what you feel versus what they show, is designed to keep you stuck, confused, helpless. But now you know better. Awareness is not just seeing the truth, it's holding on to it, even when someone tries to erase it. And that takes strength, real strength, not loud, dramatic strength, but quiet, inner strength, the kind that keeps you grounded when everything around you is trying to shake your balance. They will try to rewrite history. They will downplay what they did. They will act as if you're overreacting. But the truth doesn't need their permission to exist. It lives in you, and that truth is your anchor. You might feel tempted to explain yourself, to get them to understand how much they've hurt you, to show them what you see. But here's the truth. They already know. They know what they did. They know what you've realized. And they're not confused. They're calculating. That's why silence is one of their favorite weapons. It forces you to carry the weight of the damage while they act untouched. Don't fall for it. Don't chase clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. Instead, shift your focus inward. Every time they withhold affection, dismiss your feelings, or give you the silent treatment, see it for what it is, a distraction from your power. Because once you stop reacting, you start reclaiming. The moment you refuse to be pulled into their mind games, you break the pattern. That's where freedom lives, not in fixing them, not in making them see you, but in choosing to see yourself with full clarity and full compassion. You are not broken, you are waking up. And this discomfort you're feeling? It's growth, it's transformation. It's the shedding of illusions you were taught to hold. You're stepping into your strength. One thought at a time, one boundary at a time, one truth at a time. And the more you honor what you know, the more unstoppable you become. Let that sink in. You are not powerless. You were just distracted from your power, and now you're taking it back. They start watching you more closely, not out of curiosity, but out of fear. The moment they realize you're no longer under their spell, you become unpredictable. And to someone who thrives on control, unpredictability is terrifying. So they monitor your words, your body language, your tone. They study your silence. They dissect your distance. Not because they care, but because they need to know what you'll do next. That's how fragile their sense of power truly is. It depends entirely on your compliance. Once you step out of their script, the mask begins to crack. But this is where many people fall into a trap. They mistake attention for care. They think the sudden interest means remorse or a chance at healing. It doesn't. It means you're a threat to their illusion. And instead of apologizing, they try to readjust, to adapt, to twist the narrative in a way that pulls you back in. They'll mirror your growth, mimic your language, pretend to evolve. But it's only a performance, a distraction. Because if they can't control how you see them, they'll try to control how you see yourself. This is when your inner clarity becomes everything. You must hold the truth with both hands, even when it trembles. Because the moment you start questioning what you've already seen, they win. Evil doesn't need to change, it just needs you to forget. So stay awake, stay grounded. Trust what was revealed when the mask slipped. Because what you felt in your gut when their eyes turned cold, that was real. And the more you trust your reality, the less room there is for them to manipulate it. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are responding to something that is deeply wrong, even if it looks normal on the surface. The greatest danger is not always the loudest pain. It's the subtle erosion of your self-worth, one moment at a time. And that erosion stops the second you stop explaining, defending, and justifying your awareness. You don't owe anyone access to your mind. You don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when doubt has become your prison. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the right to rebuild a life where your clarity is not constantly under attack, and that starts with refusing to be watched like a threat for simply waking up. Let them observe, let them wonder, let them try to decode your silence. Because your silence is no longer fear, it's power, it's presence. It's the loudest truth they can unhear. You are no longer playing a role in their game. You are writing a new story, one decision at a time. You're not here to convince. You're here to rise, to reclaim every part of you that was dimmed by their manipulation. And as you do, you become the one thing they never prepared for, a version of you they can no longer control. Keep going, keep rising. You're not lost, you're awakening. They begin to play the victim. The moment control slips from their hands, they scramble to flip the narrative. Suddenly they're the ones who've been hurt. They're misunderstood, mistreated, betrayed. Not because it's true, but because it's useful. When evil people realize you've seen through their lies, they can't win by logic or facts, so they go after sympathy. They craft a story where you're the villain, and they're the wounded soul just trying to survive. It's not an apology, it's a strategy. A shield to protect their image while wounding your truth. They want you to feel guilty for walking away, for seeing them clearly, for protecting yourself. And if guilt doesn't work, they'll try shame. They'll call you heartless, cold, disloyal. They'll question your character with the same breath they once used to flatter you. But this shift isn't about you. It's about their desperation to stay in control of the story. Because once you name the truth, you break their illusion. And when an illusion is all they have, the truth becomes a threat. You have to hold the line. Because their words will cut in all the places you once trusted them. They know your triggers. They know your kindness. They know you care deeply. That's why they weaponize emotion to bring you back under their spell. But here's the difference now. You've grown. You see the manipulation, even when it's dressed as vulnerability. You recognize the difference between real pain and performance. And that insight is your armor, not to become bitter, but to become wise. Empathy is not weakness, but empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. You are not responsible for healing someone who broke you. You are not cold for choosing peace over chaos. You are not heartless for saying no to a cycle that drained you. Let that sink in. You don't have to explain your healing to the person who made it necessary. You don't owe closure to someone who would rather destroy your clarity than face their own darkness. Your healing doesn't need their permission. This is the season where you choose yourself, fully and without apology. Where you allow your heart to be soft, but your boundaries to be steel. Where you no longer fold just because someone cries louder than you speak. That's not cruelty. That's growth. That's evolution. That's what it means to protect your peace in a world that profits from your chaos. You are not abandoning anyone. You're returning to yourself. And that return is sacred. Let them call you cold. Let them call you heartless. Let them misunderstand your silence. Because you are no longer here to play roles that suffocate you. You are here to breathe, to live, to rise. And when evil people cry victim as a last resort, don't respond with guilt. Respond with grace and distance. Protect your light, guard your energy, and keep walking. You've already survived their version of the story. Now it's time to write your own. They test your silence. They push just enough to see if you'll break. They send a message, a glance, a comment meant to pierce your healing. It's subtle, calculated, designed to reopen the door you've closed. Because to them, silence is not a boundary. It's a challenge. It's a threat to their control. And they can't stand the fact that you've stopped reacting, that you've withdrawn the fuel that once powered their game. So they provoke, they bait, they poke at your progress just to see if the old version of you will resurface. But silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that not every battle deserves your energy. It's realizing that peace isn't loud, but it's powerful. When you go silent, you reclaim authority over your space. You create distance that speaks louder than any argument ever could, and they feel that shift. It disrupts their pattern. It steals their script. Because what they crave most is a reaction. And when you give them nothing, you remind them they no longer hold that power. This is where inner strength is tested, not by what you say, but by what you refuse to say. You don't owe them access to your process. You don't need to defend your distance. Silence is not empty, it's full of self-respect. And every time you choose it over chaos, you reinforce your healing. It's not about shutting down. It's about tuning out what no longer deserves your attention. Because not all noise is worthy of your ears. Not all voices are worthy of your response. They want you to feel unsettled in the quiet. They want you to doubt your boundaries. They want you to question if maybe you've gone too far. But that doubt is the echo of your old self. The version that tolerated, explained, endured. You're not that person anymore. You don't need to shrink yourself to make others feel comfortable. You don't need to answer every knock at the door of your peace. Growth means choosing yourself even when it's misunderstood. Especially when it's misunderstood. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. Clear on what you will and will not accept. Clear on what you're building. Clear on what healing truly looks like. And sometimes healing looks like silence that refuses to be shaken. It's the calm after the storm, the space where your soul finally breathes. And no, they won't like it. They'll interpret it as rejection, punishment, indifference. Let them. Your peace doesn't need to be explained to those who disrupted it. You're allowed to be unbothered. You're allowed to be unmoved. You're allowed to protect your growth like it's sacred. Because it is. You didn't fight this hard to get dragged back in with a few well-placed words. You've earned your silence. You've earned your stillness. Let it speak. Let it protect. Let it remind them that the game is over, and you're not playing anymore. They study your moves in silence, not because they care, but because they fear your strength. Once you saw through them, they didn't disappear. They retreated. They're watching, calculating, waiting for a crack in your armor. Not to reconnect, but to regain access. That's how control works. It never leaves quietly. It watches for a weak moment, a tired heart, a soft reply. But you must stay rooted. You must understand that their curiosity isn't interest. It's a search for leverage. Because knowing you've awakened makes them uncomfortable. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you they could manipulate. This is the phase where many fall back. The silence grows loud. The absence feels heavy. And just when it starts to feel safe, the past circles back pretending to be harmless. But it's not harmless. It's strategic. Their interest is not love. It's surveillance. They want to see if you still care, if you'll still respond, if they still matter. Not because they've changed, but because they can't accept that you have. It bruises their ego to see you rise, to see you calm, to see you at peace without them. They don't admire your healing. They resent it. Your power lies in not being pulled back, in seeing their attention for what it is, a test, a performance, an illusion. They think if they observe long enough, you'll break, that the silence you've built will collapse under the weight of old habits. But it won't, because this version of you isn't pretending. This version isn't seeking closure or validation. This version has tasted freedom and refuses to settle for less. They may pretend not to watch, but they notice everything. Your confidence, your boundaries, your progress, and every part of them that relied on your weakness now fears your strength. Because they can't reach you anymore. Not in the way they used to. And that terrifies them more than you'll ever know. It's not your presence they're obsessed with. It's your detachment. Your ability to walk away and stay gone. That's what truly breaks their power. You don't need to shrink to avoid being watched. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to justify your glow. You've earned your growth. You've paid the price in sleepless nights, in battles no one saw, in moments where you could have gone back, but didn't. And that matters. That means something. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them realize that you no longer operate on their terms. You don't need their chaos to feel alive. You've built your peace, and it's not up for negotiation. This is not about revenge. This is about rising, quietly, consistently, unapologetically. When evil people know that you know, they watch. Let them, but never stop moving forward. Never stop choosing yourself. Because every step you take in truth is a step away from their control. And that is the most powerful message you could ever send. Without saying a single word, they will try to rewrite the story, not because they believe in a new version, but because the truth exposes them. The truth strips away the mask they wore so comfortably. It reveals the lies, the patterns, the manipulation. And the moment you see them clearly, their control begins to crumble. So they panic, they twist the facts, they play the victim. They try to turn the narrative upside down so you question your memory, your instincts, your reality. Because if they can confuse the truth, they can delay your healing. They can insert doubt where there was once clarity. And that delay is all they need to sink their hooks back in. You've seen it before. The guilt trips, the false apologies, the clever distortions. It's not remorse, it's strategy. It's designed to blur your vision and make you second-guess the steps you've taken. Because once you know the truth, you hold the power, and evil can't survive in the light of truth. That's why they try to shade it. They want you to believe you are too sensitive, too emotional, too reactive. But deep down, you know the truth, and that truth is your weapon. It's your freedom. It's the anchor that keeps you steady when they try to shake your foundation. They will say whatever they must to paint themselves as the misunderstood one. They want sympathy, not accountability. They want you to doubt yourself so they don't have to face themselves. But self-doubt is the doorway back to captivity. You can't afford to entertain their revision. You've come too far. You've uncovered too much. And the truth didn't break you. It built you. It opened your eyes. It woke you up. It gave you the clarity to walk away, to stay away, to protect what's left of your soul. You don't have to argue with liars. You don't have to debate reality with someone who benefits from your confusion. You don't need to prove what you experienced. The truth doesn't beg for approval. It simply is. And your peace will come not from convincing others, but from refusing to be gaslit again. It will come from knowing who you are, what you saw, what you felt, and standing in that without flinching. That's power. That's growth. That's healing. They may try to shift the blame, twist the facts, or minimize the damage. Let them. You are not responsible for their lies. You are only responsible for protecting your mind from their distortion. You are only responsible for walking in the truth that set you free. Because once you stop needing their validation, you stop needing their version of the story. Your truth is enough. Your clarity is enough. You don't need to defend it. You just need to live it. Loudly, freely, unapologetically. And in that light, their shadows lose all power. Because truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. And when you hold on to it, they can never twist it again. When the truth no longer works in their favor, silence becomes their weapon. They withdraw. They vanish. They stop responding. Stop explaining. Stop pretending. Not because they've given up, but because they're calculating. They want you to feel the weight of their absence. They want their silence to scream louder than words. It's not peace they're offering, it's punishment. It's a strategy to destabilize your mind and force you into questioning yourself. Because when you no longer serve their control, your clarity becomes their enemy. And silence is how they make you doubt it. They know that silence creates anxiety. They know that a sudden void makes you search for meaning. So they leave you in the dark, hoping you'll stumble, hoping you'll reach out, hoping you'll apologize for finally standing up for yourself. But silence is not power when it's rooted in manipulation. It's fear disguised as strength. It's retreat masked as dignity. It's a final attempt to provoke you into breaking your own progress. Don't fall for it. Don't chase ghosts. Don't fill in their silence with your guilt. Their silence is not your problem to solve. You're not here to soothe the discomfort of someone who chose deception. You're not here to beg for basic decency from someone who weaponizes your emotions. Silence is not communication. It's control. And the moment you stop fearing it, they lose their grip. You don't need closure from a person who was never open. You don't need explanations from someone who built their identity on confusion. What you need is peace, and that comes from accepting what you already know. You have to understand that their silence is loud with intent. It's not passive. It's not accidental. It's designed to unnerve you, to make you feel like you're missing something, to make you crawl back. But you're not missing anything. You've seen enough. You've felt enough. You've survived enough. You don't need more proof to validate your decision. You don't need a final word to walk away with strength. You already have everything you need inside of you: clarity, courage, and conviction. Don't give them the satisfaction of your confusion. Don't let silence become a tool that bends your will. Stand firm. Breathe. Reclaim your mental space. Every second you spend wondering why they're silent is a second stolen from your growth. Let their silence echo back to them. Let it remind them that you've risen, that you've chosen yourself, that you no longer fear abandonment from those who never had your back to begin with. Because real strength is not found in begging for communication. It's found in honoring your boundaries when someone chooses to cross them with silence. They want you chasing noise. They want you drowning in what-ifs. But you're not here to chase. You're here to heal, to grow, to rise. And you do that by not letting their silence speak louder than your self-worth. You are no longer the person who waits for permission to move forward. You move forward because you finally remember who you are. They don't just want to be invisible. They want to erase your reality. The moment they know you've figured them out, they shift into denial, not just of their actions, but of your experience. They'll pretend nothing happened. They'll walk around with false calm, act like you're the one imagining things, like your emotions are an overreaction, like the hurt they caused wasn't real. This is not misunderstanding. It's not forgetfulness. It's a deliberate tactic to rewrite the story, to paint you as unstable, dramatic, or too sensitive. And if you're not grounded, you'll start believing them. Gaslighting isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like casual indifference. A shrug, a laugh, a "you're crazy" under their breath. But the goal is always the same, to make you doubt what you felt, what you saw, what you know deep in your bones. This is psychological warfare, masked as misunderstanding. It chips away at your confidence. It makes you second-guess your instincts. It creates fog where there was once clarity. And in that fog they regain control, not because they're right, but because you start losing trust in your own judgment. You are not crazy for noticing patterns. You are not overreacting for holding someone accountable. You are not difficult for expecting respect. The fact that they're trying to erase your truth is the greatest sign that you've discovered something real. They fear your clarity. They fear your voice. They fear your ability to name what they worked so hard to hide. When you stop playing along with the illusion, you threaten their power. And when power feels threatened, denial becomes their shield. But you don't need their validation to make your truth valid. You don't need their acknowledgement to give your experience meaning. Your pain is real. Your story is real. Your instincts are real. Don't let them twist your reality to protect their image. Don't let their comfort become more important than your truth. When someone deliberately denies your experience, they're not protecting you. They're protecting the version of themselves that can't handle accountability. You must reclaim the authority over your own mind. Anchor yourself in what you know. Stay rooted in what you felt. Trust the unease that kept nudging you forward. That wasn't fear. It was your inner wisdom rising up through the noise. When someone tries to silence that voice, you speak louder, not to convince them, but to remind yourself that your voice matters, that your truth matters, that your healing begins the moment you stop looking for them to agree with your reality. You don't need a witness to believe your own eyes. You don't need approval to take back your peace. Denial may be their defense, but truth is your weapon. And when you live in truth, you become untouchable, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Strong enough to see the manipulation, call it by name, and still choose to move forward with your head high and your spirit intact. When denial stops working, they often turn to the next weapon in their arsenal, projection. They can't handle being seen for what they are, so they flip the script. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're controlling. You're toxic. You're the one who causes all the chaos. They take everything they fear about themselves and throw it onto you like a mask they no longer want to wear. And if you're not careful, you'll start to wear it. You'll begin to carry shame that doesn't belong to you. You'll begin to question your own worth through the lens of their fear. Projection is not about truth. It's about escape. It's about avoiding the discomfort of self-reflection. It's the desperate act of someone who refuses to look in the mirror, so they use your face as their substitute. The more accurate your insight, the more violent their accusations, because they know you see them clearly, and that clarity terrifies them. So, they try to bury it under lies, distortions, and emotional chaos. But just because someone hands you their broken mirror doesn't mean you have to accept it. You are not responsible for the reflection they refuse to face. This is where your power must rise. You must refuse to internalize what isn't yours. You must stop allowing other people's fears to define your identity. When they say you're too much, what they really mean is that you're too aware. When they call you cold, it's because you stopped tolerating disrespect. When they label you angry, it's because you finally set a boundary. Don't shrink to make others feel comfortable. Don't soften your truth to protect someone who tried to break you. You are allowed to hold people accountable without guilt. You are allowed to walk away from manipulation without apology. You are allowed to say no and mean it. You are allowed to see through the mask and still choose peace over performance. Their projections only stick when you forget who you are. So remember your strength. Remember your heart. Remember that your clarity is not cruelty, it's courage. It's the kind of courage that makes people uncomfortable because it threatens the lies they tell themselves. They can throw every label they want, but labels don't define you. Actions do. Your actions to protect your peace. Your actions to guard your mind. Your actions to choose healing over revenge. That's what separates you. That's what makes you powerful. Not because you play their game better, but because you refuse to play it at all. You rise above it. You let their projections fall flat on the ground because you no longer need to prove yourself. You already know who you are. You've earned that clarity. You've bled for that peace. And now you guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. And that decision, that unwavering stand in the face of manipulation, is what makes you unstoppable. When projection no longer works and you continue to stand in your truth, they reach for silence, their most subtle but punishing weapon. It's not just the absence of words. It's the deliberate withdrawal of connection. They know exactly what they're doing. Silence becomes their form of control. They disappear when you need answers. They withhold affection when you seek clarity. They retreat into themselves, not because they're overwhelmed, but because they want you to feel abandoned. They want you to question your worth. They want you to chase them. They want the silence to speak louder than any apology ever could. And here's what's dangerous. If you've been conditioned to link love with approval, this silence doesn't just hurt. It wounds your sense of identity. It makes you wonder, did I go too far? Did I say too much? Should I have stayed quiet? And before you realize it, you begin to shrink again. You start over-explaining. You over-apologize. You reach out even though your soul is screaming not to. Because silence doesn't just create space, it creates fear. Fear of being unworthy. Fear of being left. Fear of being too much. But this is where your power must sharpen. Their silence is not your failure. Their emotional withdrawal is not a mirror of your value. It's a tactic. A game designed to keep you unbalanced. They want you to feel punished for seeing them clearly. They want you to regret setting boundaries. They want you to equate your strength with loneliness, so that you retreat back into compliance. Don't fall for it. Don't let silence rewrite your truth. Don't let the absence of sound shake the presence of your clarity. You deserve relationships that do not require translation. You deserve communication that is not manipulated into silence every time you express your truth. You deserve peace that is not held hostage by someone else's mood. Just because someone chooses to be silent doesn't mean your voice should disappear. You still get to speak. You still get to stand. You still get to matter. Even when they try to erase your presence with distance. This is your reminder. Their silence is not your cue to beg. It's your cue to rise. It's your opportunity to listen to the one voice that has always mattered, your own. The voice that says you're worthy even when they vanish. The voice that tells you your feelings are valid even when they're dismissed. The voice that reminds you that walking alone with truth is always better than staying connected to manipulation. You are not here to earn love through silence. You are here to embody truth through courage. You don't need to chase what disappears at the first sign of honesty. Let them go. Let their silence echo back to them. Because the moment you stop fearing the quiet is the moment you start hearing your own power. And that kind of clarity, that's what they never wanted you to find. But now you have. And there's no going back. The moment you stop fearing the quiet, you begin to understand the strength in your stillness. You begin to realize that peace isn't found in their approval. It's built in the space they abandoned. That silence they once used to punish you becomes the silence that heals you. Because now, in that void, you hear something more honest. Your own resilience rising to the surface. You stop trying to decode their behavior. You stop rewriting yourself to be more acceptable, more palatable, more convenient. You start choosing yourself in ways you never dared before. And that is the quiet roar of self-respect. When you stop chasing explanations, you reclaim your energy. You stop bargaining with people who only understand power through imbalance. You stop pleading for clarity from those who benefit from your confusion. You detach not because you don't care, but because you finally see how much caring has cost you. You start protecting your peace like it's oxygen, because for the first time you understand just how long you've been suffocating. You've been gasping for love, validation, connection, while drowning in someone else's silence. But you don't drown anymore. You rise. You rise because you've realized that survival isn't about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back. Every part of you that dimmed your light to make someone else comfortable. Every part of you that stayed silent so their ego could feel safe. Every part of you that apologized for needing more, wanting more, being more. You reclaim it, not in rage but in clarity. Not to prove a point but to prove your worth, to yourself. There is nothing more dangerous to a manipulator than someone who no longer needs their validation. When you stop responding to the bait, when you no longer fear their withdrawal, their tactics lose power. you become unshakable. Not because you're emotionless, but because you finally understand that your emotions are not liabilities. They are signals, they are truth, and they've been telling you quietly and consistently that you deserve more, not someday, not if you fix yourself, not if they change. Now, healing is not a performance. You don't need to explain your distance, justify your boundaries, or apologize for finally choosing your sanity. You owe no one an explanation for the peace you fought so hard to earn. Let them wonder. Let them stew in the silence they once weaponized. Because the difference now is that you no longer see it as a punishment. You see it as protection. What once shattered you now sharpens you. What once confused you now awakens you. You are not who you were when you begged for understanding. You are not who you were when you tolerated silence as love. You are someone who faced the void and filled it with truth. Someone who stood alone and discovered power. Someone who no longer fears the quiet, because you've become louder than it ever was. That is your breakthrough. That is your transformation. And it cannot be undone. You stop negotiating with people who see your worth as optional. You stop waiting to be chosen by those who only show up when it benefits them. You recognize that self-respect is not something you earn by pleasing others. It's something you claim by drawing a line and standing firm, even if you stand alone. Because the moment you make peace with being alone is the moment you become untouchable. You're no longer accessible to the games, the half-effort, the manipulation disguised as love. You become the one who walks away without explanation, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. The strongest move you will ever make is not convincing them to stay. It's not fixing yourself to fit their comfort. It's choosing yourself with unwavering clarity. The ones who truly value you won't require you to shrink. They won't punish your strength or silence your truth. They won't need you to abandon yourself to feel secure. But when you meet the ones who do, you won't plead anymore. You'll observe, you'll decide, and you'll exit quietly, without drama, without chaos. Because peace no longer feels like loneliness, it feels like home. You no longer beg for closure from people who communicate through avoidance. You give it to yourself. You look at the pain. You feel it. You sit with it until it teaches you, and then you let it go. Not because it wasn't heavy, but because you finally realize your hands are meant to build, not carry what breaks you. That's the shift. That's the moment your healing becomes real. When you stop replaying the betrayal and start rebuilding your boundaries. When you stop seeking justice from those who refuse to be accountable and start seeking alignment with who you are becoming. You rise by subtracting, not adding. You become powerful by releasing what weakens you. You gain clarity by distancing yourself from noise. The less you tolerate, the more you grow. The less you respond, the more you regain control. The less you fear solitude, the more you learn to trust your voice. And that voice, the one you once silenced to keep others comfortable, becomes the compass that guides every move. It becomes your source of truth, your foundation. No one can give you your worth. That's the illusion that kept you trapped. It's not earned through their approval. It's not lost through their absence. It's already yours. It always was. You just stopped seeing it when you started tying it to how they treated you. But now you remember, now you know. You are not someone waiting to be validated. You are someone reclaiming your power. You are someone who faced the storm and decided not to break. You are someone who understood that real strength is quiet, unwavering, and deeply rooted. And from that place you don't chase, you attract. You don't explain, you evolve. You don't beg, you become. You become dangerous the moment you stop needing permission to exist fully. You stop asking others to accept the parts of you they've tried to shrink. You stop waiting for reassurance to be bold, to be loud, to be quiet, to be still. However you are meant to be in your most authentic state. That's when you stop living for approval and start living with purpose. Because the most powerful version of you isn't the one that bends, adapts, or hides to be loved. It's the one that chooses to be real, even if it means being misunderstood, underestimated, or walked away from. Every time you choose peace over proving, you evolve. Every time you release the need to convince someone of your value, you rise. You stop explaining yourself to those who have already decided who you are. You stop pouring energy into being seen by people committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that your time, your spirit, and your power are not currencies to be spent begging for crumbs. They are to be invested in places that multiply you, not drain you. And that awareness rewires everything. You begin to respect silence, not as absence, but as clarity. You no longer rush to fill the void with distractions or desperate connections. You sit in that space. You breathe, you listen, and from that stillness you hear your own voice again. The one that had been buried under noise, under fear, under all the opinions that never belonged to you. That voice becomes your standard. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, you don't pursue it. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. If it makes you doubt your worth, it doesn't belong in your life. You don't measure your growth by how loud you are, but by how unshakable you've become. Your boundaries are no longer reactive, they're rooted. Your strength is no longer performative, it's internal. Your energy is no longer scattered, it's intentional. You don't owe anyone access to the healed version of you if they contributed to your breaking. You don't owe kindness to those who only respected you when you were convenient. You don't owe softness to people who never held your heart with care. This is your reckoning, a turning point where you choose to rise with grace, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to yourself that you are always more than enough. You don't chase closure. You don't seek apologies. You move forward with quiet conviction, knowing that the ones meant for you will never require you to betray yourself to keep them close. You release not with bitterness, but with power, because you now understand. Real power isn't loud. It's calm. It's rooted. It's choosing yourself so fully that nothing outside of you has the authority to define you again. You're no longer waiting, you're becoming. And that changes everything. When you finally stop shrinking to fit into places that no longer deserve you, you start expanding into the life you were meant to claim. You stop performing for love and start embodying truth. There's a shift that happens when your inner world becomes more sacred than someone else's opinion. You no longer chase validation like oxygen. You breathe deeper without it, because real confidence isn't loud or dramatic. It's silent, grounded, and unshakable. It's knowing that even if everything around you falls apart, you won't. Because your worth was never built on what others gave you. It was always within. You become a fortress, not made of walls, but of boundaries. Not to push people away, but to protect your energy, your peace, your soul. And when you honor yourself like that, the world begins to reflect it back. Not immediately, not perfectly, but deeply. You begin to attract experiences aligned with your truth, not your wounds. You begin to move with purpose, not desperation. You stop settling for half-hearted affection, for empty words, for inconsistent presence. You stop making excuses for people who show you their lack of care in every action. You stop believing that love must come wrapped in confusion or pain. Because you've tasted peace, and now chaos is no longer seductive. You've stood in your solitude, and now you're no longer afraid to walk alone. You've touched your own power, and now anything that drains it is no longer welcome. There's a maturity in this mindset, a quiet defiance, a refusal to abandon yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You learn that protecting your heart doesn't make you hard. It makes you wise. You recognize that not everyone deserves the softest parts of you, especially if they've proven they can't hold them. You don't argue with disrespect. You don't negotiate your worth. You don't tolerate being half seen, half heard, or half loved. You either experience depth or you walk away. You either feel alignment or you trust the silence. Because now you understand the cost of self-betrayal. You understand how expensive it is to give pieces of yourself to people who never asked to understand you. So you conserve. You rise. You become deliberate with your time, your energy, your heart. And through that discipline, you become untouchable. Not because you are cold, but because you are clear. Not because you've built walls, but because you've built standards. Not because you are closed off, but because you are finally open to truth, to purpose, to self-respect. This is the edge where old patterns die and new strength is born. This is the moment you stop bleeding for those who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. This is where the cycle breaks. This is where you reclaim every part of you they tried to silence. Not for revenge, not for applause, but for peace. Because the moment you decide to no longer betray yourself is the moment you step into a life that no longer betrays you either. There comes a moment when you stop looking for permission. You stop waiting for the world to tell you it's okay to rise, to heal, to change. Because now you understand, if you wait for permission, you'll be waiting forever. The world doesn't hand out approval slips for your greatness. It tests you. It resists you. It wants to see if you'll fold when things get hard, or if you'll rise despite the pressure. And when you decide you don't need to be liked, understood, or applauded, that's when you truly begin. That's when you ignite the fire within that no one can put out. The shift happens in silence, not in grand declarations, but in subtle choices. You say no when you used to say yes. You walk away when you used to beg to stay. You let go, not out of bitterness, but because your peace finally matters more than your attachment. That is power. That is growth. That is you becoming everything you were too afraid to be. The old version of you lived for acceptance. This version lives for alignment. The old you feared confrontation. This one honors boundaries. The old you needed external love. This one builds it from within. That transformation doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. You don't owe anyone the watered-down version of yourself just to keep them comfortable. You don't have to shrink to be digestible. You were never meant to be small. You were meant to stretch, to break cycles, to rise from pain and turn it into purpose. And that doesn't happen by staying silent. That happens when you decide that your voice matters, your dreams matter, your soul matters. That happens when you stop begging for space and start claiming it. Not with arrogance, but with certainty. Because you're no longer confused about who you are. You've seen your own strength in the darkest hours. You've held yourself together when no one else showed up. You've walked through fire and kept walking. That isn't weakness. That's evidence. You're not here to be saved. You're here to remember you never needed saving. Just awakening. Healing doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you choose not to let it define you. It means you stop replaying the pain and start rebuilding the person you were before the damage, but stronger, wiser, clearer, more intentional. And with each step, you become less available to anything that feels like chaos. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop pouring into people who only show up with empty hands. You stop begging for crumbs when you know you were built for more. And most importantly, you stop apologizing for your boundaries, for your standards, for your growth, because now you see the truth. You were never too much. You were just never in the right room. And now you're building your own. One where peace is not earned, it's expected. One where you no longer chase love, you become it. Strength is not found in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you believe in your truth when no one else hears it. You don't need the world to echo your value. That echo comes from within. It builds when you choose silence over reaction, discipline over impulse, and purpose over comfort. The most powerful version of you emerges when you're no longer moved by noise, no longer addicted to attention, and no longer seeking validation from empty sources. That version of you doesn't chase closure, it creates it. It doesn't cling to approval, it outgrows it. Because growth isn't always visible. Sometimes it looks like distancing. Sometimes it looks like detaching. Sometimes it looks like rebuilding your identity in solitude, without applause, without recognition, without compromise. The real evolution begins when you choose discomfort over distraction, when you sit with your pain instead of numbing it, when you face your triggers instead of avoiding them, when you look in the mirror and stop lying to yourself. That's where the shift happens. Not in pretending, not in performance, but in radical honesty. That kind of honesty shatters illusions. It strips away the masks you wore to survive. It exposes the parts of you buried under other people's expectations. And as painful as that sounds, it's the only way forward. You can't build your future while living in denial. You can't create change while protecting comfort. Every breakthrough demands a breakdown of ego, of fear, of false identity. And when you let it fall apart, you give yourself permission to build something real. No more waiting to feel ready. No more hoping for the right timing. The truth is, the moment you decide to take ownership, that's the right time. Nothing external will ever make you more prepared than the decision to stop wasting your life on what drains you. Your peace is too expensive to be sacrificed for anything temporary. Your energy is too sacred to be spent on anyone who treats it like an afterthought. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to become fully aligned with who you are. And that requires boundaries. It requires self-respect. It requires non-negotiable standards that you do not explain, justify, or lower. Power is quiet. It doesn't yell. It doesn't seek revenge. It doesn't need to prove. True power is found in restraint, in discipline, in walking away with dignity when your presence is no longer honored. And the moment you realize that, you stop needing closure from people who never respected you. You stop over-explaining to those who were never listening. You stop proving yourself to the wrong crowd. Because now you're not reacting to the world. You're responding to your purpose. You finally remember that the greatest project you'll ever work on is not what you build around you, but what you build within you. And that version of you, the one born in silence and shaped by fire, is unstoppable.